Well, tell me about the year when it passed.
Well, the year that it passed was 2005, and we were pretty sure it would pass because now we had the Republican majority. I really have still not quite understood how Representative Willard was able to circumvent the local legislation process, because you see it's a local problem, and usually that was funneled through the local delegation, which was always the kiss of death and would still be the kiss of death in 2005. But somehow it became general legislation that the whole legislature would address. And so they had, I think, 105, and we only needed 91. So we still, lobbied, but it was pretty much...
What was the vote? Do you recall?
I don't recall what the vote was. I'm sorry, I don't recall. Maybe around a word.
Okay.
It passed. That's all I remember. I was very happy. I was down for the day it passed in the House, and I remember being there when it passed in the Senate. And the person who led the fight in the Senate was Tom Price, because he was in the legislature at that time before he went to Congress. And I can still remember I was in the gallery, and after it passed, Tom looked up at the gallery, and I was going like this, So it was a great, great joy when it finally passed. And then, well, actually, even before it passed, Oliver Porter, the committee for Sandy Springs, he would say, "You've got a tiger by the tail. You're going to have a city by the end of this year. What are you going to do? How are you going to run it?" And he was the one that would give us these complicated graphs that showed what you had to have done by when. I mean, he is a real manager, and he thinks ahead. And he made us focus on this business of how are we going to govern. And so the more we talked about it, the more we realized that involving our company would be, plus the fact that in my years in economics, I had read a lot about outsourcing. I'd never read about a city being run by a company, but I'd read a lot about outsourcing. So it was a natural. With the group that we had, and everybody was oriented towards private enterprise. And so Oliver went down to visit Weston, Florida, which we knew was totally run by a private company. And then we had the city manager of Weston come up. And I don't think we paid. I think the company that was running Weston paid for the city manager. I mean, we were always on a shoestring. So that made us even more, after he came up and explained how it worked, even more convinced that that was the way we wanted to go. And then the governor, then we realized that how do you form a city when you don't have any kind of authority? I mean, just members of a committee for Sandy Springs, who's going to listen to us when we try to sign contracts or something? And again, I think it was Oliver's foresight that said we need a governance commission that will have that imprint of authority. Even though the governance commission was only making recommendations, but these companies had more that were going to come in and bid on it, I guess including CH2 Emil. If they had just been dealing with a little old committee, they probably wouldn't have, who are these people? But dealing with a commission appointed by the governor, and Oliver was, of course, on the commission. So that's how we worked that. And then the commission went out and started putting out information about what we wanted and what kind of RFPs. Mm-hmm. So Oliver was invaluable in that year. From the time we realized we were going to be a city until we became a city, he led us to make sure things would work. Otherwise, we would have just been euphoric and not know, well, what are we going to do when we become a city?
So the legislature then approved this in April, I guess, March or April.
I think it was in March, and then, of course, had to be signed by the governor. Oh, and then we had the big excitement about it's got to go to the Justice Department. And is it going to get to the Justice Department in time to be approved before the referendum? The date of the referendum was in June. Well, luck would have it that one of our former Sandy Springs committee members was in the Justice Department, Hans von Spakowski. And so somehow, I don't remember whether it was Senator Isaacson or what, but anyway, it ended up on his desk. And, of course, it made very rapid progress, and things were approved in time. So I'll never forget that.
What kind of election campaign did you run, or did you know that once it got to the voters?
No. You mean for the referendum? We had an election for the referendum, and Rusty, who was on the committee for Sandy Springs, he and Gabriel took charge of the referendum propaganda, and we had considerable activity in mailings. And I don't recall then how we paid for that. It must have been some money we had left still on the committee for Sandy Springs, and Rusty's services were for free. But we had yes posters all over Sandy Springs. Just yes, that's all it said with an exclamation point. And, of course, it passed overwhelmingly, and it was an unbelievable joy that night, and we were at the Heritage Park. That was before we had the big green. And we had some kind of a little, on the gazebo. For years, I had sometimes I felt I really was going to do it. We had all these signs that when you come in, it said, unincorporated Sandy Springs. And I kept thinking, I'm going to get me some green paint, and I'm going to cover up where it says U.S. And, of course, I never did it up, but, I had thoughts of doing it. So that day, when we got the results, Rusty had this big thing that said unincorporated, and then we ripped off the un. We got pictures of all that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there was great rejoicing, a huge outpouring of people to Heritage, which was the central place where we met in that little William Payne house many, many times. There's a little, that little room down there. That's where the board met many times. Sometimes we would meet in Tibby's boardroom. He had a nice conference room. So we begged and borrowed through the years.
How often did the committee meet?
Oh, we met monthly.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. We met monthly.
Okay, so now we've been authorized to become a city, and it became time to run for office personally. Tell me about that and that decision. And
I don't remember too much decision making. It just happened. I don't know. It was a natural, I think, and so I don't remember that there was too much agonizing or that there was a decision process. It was just, I just slid right into it. I don't know why, but I guess I felt I was suited, and most everybody else seemed to think it was okay, so that's why I ran. And of course I had opposition that I think, in retrospect, we felt was put up by the Democrat Party. And the major contention that the opposition brought up was the idea of a private party, a private company running our city, and the profit that involved. And so that's what the debates focused on. And my opponent was an attorney, but he didn't have an office, and he would conduct his business at a bar. So it was not a very difficult campaign.
So then you got elected. That was November.
And in December we started. Things moved fast. you didn't have time to agonize about decision making. You just had to go with the flow. Things were moving so fast. And that's, when we came in here on December the 1st, and you all had the balloons all over the place, and we had office furniture, and we had computers, and the telephones worked. It was an amazing thing to us.
In thinking about these first 4 years, what are you most proud of?
Well, I'm most proud of the fact that all the services got started rolling quickly and efficiently. And I think people do feel that they're connected to this city and that they have total response. And the thing that people mentioned to me, like Judge Carnes, he said, the city staff thinks of things to do, like they just put up some kind of, it looks like bowling pins to get out of High Point and not get caught up in that Greenwich traffic. He said that was so imaginative, and no other government was so responsive to us ever. So the people feel that the government is responsive and trying to make things better, and they really feel it.
Now, if you had something that you had wished had been done differently, or that you had done differently, what would that be?
I really don't have anything that I can think of right now that I wish had been done. Well, of course, I think we made a mistake on the first police chief. That was a mistake. But I don't think at the time that we had a choice to make, the 3 people we had, we would have done any better with the 2 we didn't go with. So we probably just didn't have a very good search. I can't recall exactly how that search was done. I think it was some kind of a justice committee or something. I don't know. But that was one place where we stumbled.
Well, in looking to the next 4 years, what are you hoping to?
Of course, the redevelopment of downtown Sandy Springs. And, all the city can do is be helpful. We can't redevelop it. The property owners have to redevelop it. And I do hope that I can engender some kind of initiative with these property owners. I'm meeting with one of them, a big one, next week. And we want to be helpful, but we want not just we don't want to be in the way, but we also want to be proactive in terms of anything we can do to help them. But the initiative has got to come from the property owners. They own the buildings. They are going to be the ones taking the risk in terms of what they put up. So we can't very well say, this is what you're going to have to put up. But I'm hoping redevelopment of downtown Sandy Springs after the recession, and I think it's going to be another year or so before the banks are ready to lend. But I think in the meantime, it behooves these property owners to start thinking about what is it we're going to do once we can get credit and improve the looks of downtown Sandy Springs. So I think, that's a huge, huge issue. I'm sure that building a city hall will help jumpstart some of this development. But I don't think that we should be building right now because I think it's too uncertain what our tax revenues are going to do for the next year or so. But after we get over this hump, then I think we should start thinking about building our city hall.